Have you ever avoided a knife simply because of a single thing that turned you off about the manufacturer, and then you finally get your hands on it and you realize that you made a mistake? How's it going, everybody? I'm Rollshambo, the connoisseur and collector of all things sharp and shiny, and this is the Damned Designs Banshee. By the way, if that's a yes, comment down below, smack the like button, let YouTube know that you enjoy this type of content, because today we're not just going to review this Damned Designs Banshee. No, we're going to take it a step further. This is an episode of Grail or Garbage, the series where I systematically and categorically rank and review these knives to give you the context that you need to decide once and for all, does it deserve a spot in your pocket, in your EDC rotation, or even in your display case? To find out, we're going to rank it 1 through 10 categorically. Those categories are materials, ergonomics, fidget factor, the lock, and finally fit and finish. At the end, we'll add up all the scores, and then we'll place it on our leaderboard, which looks like this, and we'll know once and for all, is the Damned Designs Banshee a Grail, or is it garbage? And it's time. We need to rank this Damned Designs Banshee because I've had it long enough. I've had it long enough to really hold it. I've carried it. I've examined it. I've fidgeted with it. And I've done some research on it. So here's the thing. The Damned Design Banshee comes in a couple different variations. This specific one is the titanium with 14C variation. So keep that in mind. This is the variation that I'm ranking. I'm not ranking all of them as if they were all the same knife, because with different materials, they are different knives. Same model, different materials. So we are ranking this one today. And let's go ahead and start off with the materials. Well, we get titanium on the handle scales, and then we get 14C28N on the blade. I like both of those materials. Both of those materials are good. We also get a steel liner lock mechanism. It comes with a backspacer, or I'll be honest, I hate calling this a backspacer because it barely spaces out the back. This is pretty much an open back design, but they have a nod to a backspacer, and for that they also use titanium. If I'm not mistaken, which I might be, I believe this is also a titanium stamped clip, but it might just be a regular steel stamped clip. I'm not entirely sure. I did not find out. I did look, but I did not find out. So those are the materials in a nutshell. And well, how do I feel about that? Well, the materials are highly weighed against the cost. To get this one or one similar to this with titanium scales and 14C28N for the blade, they go for about $110. Now, I like these materials. I like 14C as a blade steel. It's very user friendly, very well rounded out, and I love titanium. Titanium is one of the best, bar none, handle scale materials, period. It's resistant to rust. It's resistant to impacts. It's resistant to just about everything, including heat and wear. I mean, titanium is a premium handle scale material, so there's no complaints there. Now, when I look at this objectively, I do have to think about the other knives that are also made in China that also have these materials that cost less. Looking at you, Tucson. In fact, I do have a Tucson knife that has both 14C28N and titanium handle scales, and it's a frame lock, and it was, less than $80. Which, by the way, if you want to see that video, I will link it up above. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about this. Do I have an issue with the materials? Absolutely not. Do I think that it's unfair? Definitely not. I point out the other knives that come with these same materials because I like to give people the context for why I give it the score that I give it. I like these materials, but because there are other knives with similar manufacturing and the same materials made for less money, it means that I can only give this a 7 out of 10 for materials. Moving on, the next category is ergonomics. How does it feel in the hand? Can you hold it in multiple positions? Does it feel comfortable? Are there any hot spots? Does the pocket clip play a role here? How is it? Can you hold on to it? Yeah, absolutely. It's, you know what, the ergonomics actually surprised me a little bit. You get some nice chamfering here on the scales, so it starts out with this slight peak and then it goes a little bit downhill, and that allows it to fit pretty comfortably in your hand. Truth be told, I would have actually preferred it to be a little bit steeper on the chamfering so that it rolled into the meat of my hand better. It didn't, but you know what, it also doesn't feel bad. It's not hand meltingly good by any stretch, you know, and we love the knives that are, but this one is not. The pocket clip is not bad at all. For being a stamped clip of this variety, it pretty much disappears. I do feel it in the meat of my hand a little bit there, so the pocket clip does stand out, but it doesn't hurt, and I wouldn't even necessarily call it a hot spot, but I do notice its existence. Speaking of the pocket clip, did I mention that you can move it over to the other side? Heyo, lefties will love that. We got to talk about the jimping. There is a perfectly adequate amount of jimping. It is enough. Had there been less, I would have complained. Had there been more, I would have wondered why, but this is actually the perfect amount of jimping, and that leads to a really good saber grip. In reverse grip, could you reverse grip it? Absolutely, but there's really no point because this isn't really a stabby knife that you'd want to stab into things. So while reverse grip is possible, it makes me ask, but why? But why? As far as the texturing on the handle scales goes, it looks deeper than it feels. It's definitely there, and it's definitely milled in with those striations, and you also get that striation matched on the pivot as well. I don't feel it, and because I don't feel it, I don't necessarily know how much it actually does as far as lending to a controlled grip, but there it is. You do get a sharpening choil there, and notice that I mentioned sharpening choil. That's not necessarily a finger cutout. Could you trigger pull it a little bit? Sure. I don't suggest it. It's not really what it's meant for. The natural, most comfortable grip for me is a saber grip, and it feels good. It feels really good. Another ergonomic thing is that it's not hard or uncomfortable to access that lock bar. So for those reasons, it's not amazing, but you know what? It is pretty good. And so it's going to be getting a 7 out of 10 for ergonomics. Boom, did you see how that flew out? That's good because we're going to talk about the Fidget Factor. Do you want to play with it? Is it something that's inspiring to play with? Do you feel like you could fidget with this without thinking about it? Is it easy to manipulate? How's the balance? Well, you know what? All of it's actually pretty decent. This surprised me because I did not expect it to be as good of a fidget knife as it currently is. This fidgets really well. The balance point is right here underneath the finger cutout, or the index finger groove, whatever you want to call that. And because the lock bar is easily accessed and the ergonomics are decent, this is something that's really easy to play with. The liner lock does not really necessarily benefit it as far as a lock is concerned, but it does benefit it as far as fidgeting with it is concerned, because you never have to worry about that lock getting in the way. The handle scales protect the lock bar from getting in the way of you deploying this, and so that's pretty good. It also has this flipper tab that has a decent amount of jimping, and it will work in both light switch and push button type deployments. Of course, if you know me, you know that my favorite is the Spidey flick or the reverse flick, and that actually works the best. You know, honestly, I probably could have chopped off that flipper tab and been absolutely fine with it just as a flicker from that deployment hole, which looks kind of like a triangle, kind of like an oblong, kind of like they didn't know what to do, so they're like, yeah, that works, why not? So yeah, is it fun to fidget with? Absolutely. It's comfortable to fidget with. It's something that you could do for a decently long amount of time without necessarily getting tired. The balance is not amazing, but it's pretty decent, and you know, for all of those reasons, I have to give it a bit of a higher score. In fact, I think that this category is actually where the Banshee really shines. The action is good, running on bearings, and it feels good. It feels really good. It's going to be getting an 8 out of 10 for Fidget Factor. Now we're almost there, but we got 2 categories left. Let's talk about the lock. The lock, as I did touch on, is a liner lock, and how does it lock up? We'll call that about 22%. Yeah, you know, it's decent. If you were to, you know, spine whack this, you probably wouldn't have any issues if you do it, you know, lightly. But is it the most durable lock in the world? No, it's a liner lock. Liner locks are quite obviously not meant for hard use, and I would not hard use this knife. As far as the lockup is concerned, there's no blade play. Up, down, left, or right. What about double clutch? Nope. Falls shut relatively easily, and after it locks up, it falls into position, and that seems pretty damn centered to me. The access to the lock bar is also decent, but at the end of the day, I'm not really impressed by it. It's a liner lock because they're like, you know what, we gotta have a lock in there somewhere, right? But at the $110 price point, I actually would have preferred to have seen a frame lock. And before you say that there's no difference, there is a difference. When the lock is part of the overall structure of the knife, it's going to be sturdier. And it has been proven that frame locks do hold up better as far as durability testing is concerned. And so that would have been something that at $110, if you're going to make it 110 bucks, you might as well include it as a frame lock, or at least make a frame lock version. That's actually what I would have preferred to have seen for those that do use this a bit more. And you know, with the 14C and the titanium, they had a really good user theme going, especially with this blade shape, by the way. But it should have been a frame lock, and I'm not going to apologize for that opinion, because a frame lock would have held up better under abuse. If you're just fidgeting with this, then sure, you know what, liner lock is going to be absolutely fine. If all you do is open up letters and packages and cut some tape, you know, maybe cut some threads on your clothes, then yeah, this is going to be good. And that's honestly going to fit about 95% of people's use case scenarios. The other 5% is going to look at this and say, I wish that it was a frame lock. And because I wish that it was a frame lock, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10, which is not a bad score. It just says, the lock is there and it's okay. Finally, we're down to the last category. The last category, my friends, is fit and finish. And fit and finish is way more than just talking about how well it was manufactured. Let's be honest, these Chinese OEMs have got their manufacturing down. So that as far as manufacturing is concerned, I'll get that out of the way. Yeah, it's good. But fit and finish is also about the design. How is the design? Is the design fully realized? Did they take advantage of the real estate that they got here? Because they do have some good real estate. Let's talk about the blade shape. So this blade shape is chaos. It's absolute chaos. We've got a harpoon to a drop point, sheep's foot to a Tanto to a tiny bit of a belly. I'm confused. Yeah, look, I don't hate it. And if we're talking about utility purposes, then yeah, it works, because you have enough of a tip right here where you could actually jab into something if you need to puncture something. So, you know, that's good. The Tanto means that it's going to be thicker at the tip than it would be ordinarily. With this second grind here, it means you can also do utility cuts. So it's actually very useful. And it has enough of a belly where you could do some decent slicing. So there's no issue there either. I'm just kind of confused because when you bring it all together, you end up with this. And I'll be brutally honest, I don't think that it's aesthetically pleasing. If you're not dissuaded by the shape of the blade, then perfect. And a lot of people aren't. The Banshee is actually very popular. It's very, very good, makes sense user type knife. Not everything has to be the most aesthetically pleasing thing out there. Let's go more in depth in the design language. I like that they included a swappable clip. So you could take this from right hand carry and make it left hand carry. All the lefties are going to appreciate that. No need to make an entirely separate knife just for the left-handed community. Just swap the clip over, and you know what? Most people will be absolutely okay with that. The texturing on the handle scales seems, I think that it could be better. In all honesty, like, I like that it's there. It's there to say, hey, you know what? We want you to be able to grip this. But to me, I would have liked to have seen something a bit more bold. The name of the company is Damn Designs. Where's the crazy texturing that I know you can do on here? Where's the frag pattern? Where's, like, it's there, and I know why it's there, and it makes sense. But there's a freaking demon skull on the blade, and these lines, they just don't do it for me. I would have liked to have seen more of a risk taken there. Now, it is a single-sided captive pivot, and I do like that. I also really like the fact that you only have the index finger groove right there, and they don't really tell you where to put your fingers other than that. So that's cool. I like the way that the deployment hole is perfectly placed for people like me that are addicted to reverse flicking the knife. I like that. And I like that they made it this oblong-ass triangle shape, because it guaranteed that you're going to be able to reach it. No one's going to have to sit there and dig with their finger to get there. You're going to be able to reach it. So that's cool too. But it seems like they just tried to do too much. Like I would have liked to seen something that is a bit more dedicated on the design language. That's just my personal preference. One other small thing before I wrap up fit and finish. This logo could have 100% fit on that pivot. And I think that it would have looked really good there. The snobs out there like me prefer as blank of a billboard as possible when it comes to the blade. Let the blade speak for itself. Put the logo on the pivot screw. You got the real estate there. We don't need this Russian doll maze type design on that pivot. I don't care. Make it flat. Put the logo on the pivot. It would have looked great and it would have stood out more. It does say 14C28N on the other side of the blade, but it's so small that you barely even notice that it's there because it's in the shadow of the handle scale. Overall, I think that this is a great knife, and I'm not mad at the design at all. I am kind of curious about how we got a Harpoon Tanto drop sheep's foot, because they said, you know what, no matter what your flavor is, let's just put it all together. And you know, typically when you do that, when you mix everything together, you end up with something that kind of fits everything, but also fits nothing perfectly. And because of that, I'm going to be giving it a 7 out of 10 for fit and finish. So let's add it up, shall we? For materials, it got a 7. For ergonomics, it got a 7. For Fidget Factor, it got an 8. For the lock, it was a 6. And for fit and finish, it was a 7. If you add all of those up, which I did, it comes out to a 35. Now, 35 is still a high recommend. It's the lowest it can go and still be a high recommend, but it's still a high recommend. And here's the reason why. I'm not bananas about this design, but I really like how fidget friendly it is, how carry friendly it is, how even though the blade is not the most aesthetically pleasing thing in the world to me, it's very useful. The jimping could have been a little bit deeper, but at least it's there and they put an adequate amount of it there. The oblong-esque, triangle-esque deployment hole doesn't look amazing, but it performs really good. They didn't put a whole lot of effort into the design of these cutouts on the titanium scales, but they do serve a purpose and they do give you extra grip. They have a single-sided pivot, which I love, but they could have moved the logo to it. And so while there's a lot of things that I do really like about this knife, I feel like it wasn't a concentrated effort. I think that this is going to be an excellent carry for most people, and I think that for the regular everyday uses, it's going to perform well. I do think that this is a high recommend, and I think that everyone should experience a Damn Designs knife. But you let me know. 35 out of 50. It's a high recommend, not a Grail, not garbage, somewhere in the middle like many of our knives are on this list. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, definitely let me know. I'm interested to hear people's opinions on this knife. Guys, if you liked the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, boo-hoo, there's a button for you too. And if you want to see the next Grail or garbage and you watch this long, make sure you hit subscribe. I'm Rollshambo. I'll catch you on the flip side.